Hello everyone, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let me introduce myself. My name is Aziz, and here I'm going to explain to you about my research paper on lexical functional grammar on Sundanese proverbs, focusing on a syntactical analysis. This video is presented in parallel session for Konferensi Linguistik Tahunan Atma Jaya KOLITA 18 that is held through online. Alright, so let's just get started. Welcome to my presentations here. If you know what to cover in my presentation, the first one is about Sundanese proverbs, and then my research question or problems is I want to find out what is the lexical functional grammar on Sundanese proverbs. And then I'm going to also tell you about the research methods that is used in my paper, and then how to analyze the LFG towards Sundanese proverbs. And then the fifth is how is the LFG of Sundanese proverbs, and then the last one is conclusion. Okay, so before we start to Sundanese proverbs, so there is a relation between language and culture. So beforehand, Proverbs is a kind of culture, and then it is also a kind of a language. So in order to be understood by the language community, surely not all elements in language has an arbitrary characteristics. In other words, a language must have a certain system so that it can be understood by other speakers. Language is also a system that has an orderly and pattern arrangement that forms a meaning or function. As stated by higher here, language is a system, or it has a regular pattern that forms whole ideas into meaningful utterance. As a system, language is systematic and systemic at the same time. But what is the meaning of systematic or systemic? So, systemic means that language is arranged according to a pattern that is not arranged randomly or carelessly, while systematically it means that the language is not a single system but also consists of subsystems or subordinate systems, such as we know as phonology that is studied about the sound in the language, phonology, okay, and then morphology, syntactic, and then the last one that is related to meaning is semantic or pragmatics. But here I'm going to tell you about how is it in syntactic, but not in semantic. Although it is good for you if you want to make a research of Sundanese proverbs semantically. Okay, so these subsystems are also formed according to certain rules or patterns that form a system so that they can be meaningful or functioning. Language that have been formed according to certain patterns and systems are then used by the community to communicate. Broadly speaking, communication means can be divided into two types. The first one is through verbal, and then the second one is through written. Through verbal, it is through spoken or utterance, while for written language is language that is written or printed or typed. So one of the uses of communication means in the form of written language is proverbs. Proverbs are conclusion or concise sentences or solid but contain broad meanings that contain comparisons or parables, advice, life principles, and rules of behaviors, and so on. Proverbs are born and triggered by events, experiences, and observations of people from ancient times and are spread through word of mouth or from one generation to other generation. So those here, it can be said that proverbs contain a local wisdom that has to be preserved by its people. Although proverbs are uttered by communities, their concise and solid characteristic cause the reader to not understand the function that occupies every word in the proverbs. Readers also sometimes cannot identify the completeness or incompleteness of the sentence pattern contained therein. In addition, proverbs get less special attention to the research to be understood and used in everyday life. So therefore, this study is interested in conducting a research on the proverbs functional structures that is called as F structure, especially of Sundanese proverbs. So here for Sundanese proverbs, the example of the unique proverbs. So these proverbs sometimes also contain like onomatopoeia, like in the word of celik putih, celak heran. So celik and celak, celik putih, celak heran. Okay, so here celik and celak, those are two of the onomatopoeias. But here in syntactic, the F structure of these proverbs contains only two adjective phrases. Like celik putih, one adjective phrases, and celak heran is the other adjective phrases. So what does it mean by celik putih and celak heran? So celik white and celak shiny. It implies deep meaning. So this proverbs refers to someone or something or action that is pure and sincere. Okay, to further explore and enrich the Sundanese linguistic system, this study attempts to examine the function of the Sundanese language proverbs. The function referred is the syntactic function. So the syntactic problems are interesting to talk about because the syntactic scope is very broad. So the syntactic scope doesn't only discuss words, phrases, clauses, and sentences, but also the discourse. But one of the studies done based on syntactical analysis is namely as sentence functional structure. So here, the next one is the lexical functional grammar. So the definition of a lexical functional grammar is, as we know as LFG, was firstly initiated by Ronald Copeland and John Bresnan in 1970s. LFG works not only on how a sentence builds by its syntactical structure, but broadly on how the syntactical structure constitutes or represents its semantical function. Austin stated that the lexical function grammar analyzes certain phenomena in lexical and functional terms, rather than purely in terms of phrase structure configuration. So functional structure or F structure is the grammatical semantic relation that is drawn through a matrix to get a value and form. The grammatical function is described into semantical attributes such as predicate, and then adjective, subject, and etc. A predicate is a semantical function, while subject is considered as grammatical function. So here there is subject, object, complement, and then X complement, yes. So these grammatical functions that a predicate can govern are called governable grammatical functions. So this inventory of universally available grammatical function is taken from Dalrymple. So this one is taken from Dalrymple in 2001. So, and then there is also like the functional feature and value. So in the F structure, it represents some functional features and values like subject, object, as well as tense, case, person, and number. Many sentences insert additional information in the sentence. This additional information can be in the form of complements and adjuncts. Although both complements and adjuncts have a function as an additional information to a sentence, they are not the same. So complements are an essential part of the argument structure, part of a subcategorized frame, while adjuncts provide additional information and are interpreted by association with some other subcategorized argument. So some other features and values that usually appear in sentences are proposed by Dalrymper in 2001. The features and values are here stated here. Okay. Alright, so now let's go on the methodology. So the method used in this study is qualitative methods, and then the data were collected by using library technique and note-taking technique. So here, in the library technique, the researcher collected Sundanese proverbs obtained from the internet and some from Sundanese proverbial book, and then the researcher then read and examine these proverbs to get the data needed. These data were classified using note-taking technique. So after the data were collected, the researcher then analyzes the data using the matching method, and then triangulation, because to get the more objective data, the researcher tries to collect or try to ask some native Sundanese people. So for the matching method here, matching method according to Sudaryanto in 1993. Page 5, the matching method is a method in which the data will then be analyzed or matched with knowledge outside the language. So the technique used is the determinant basic of technique with reference differentiator potency. This technique was chosen to determine the functional structure of Sundanese proverb with the referent of the language under study, namely the subject function, known as S, then predicate P, object O, indirect object I, and then small o and complement. Okay, let's go on to analysis. The proverb, according to Badudu in his work, Buku Besar Bahasa Indonesia, in 1994, is a group of words or sentences that express a purpose, a person's condition, or a thing that expresses a behavior, act, or think about a person. Okay, so here we got the data of number 1, anak dua kergumunda, and then the data number 3, anak merak kunjungan, and then 2, anak hiji kergumelis, 3, and then 4, anak tilu kerkumusut, but while the number 5 is bacang pakeuh. Okay, so here if we see from the data 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, it can be analyzed that anak dua here, and then anak hiji. So anak hiji means one, anak means a kid. So we can say like a kid. Okay, and then anak merak, and then anak tilu, 3 children. And then the last one is bacang, so this one is bacang. Okay, so those anak dua, anak hiji, anak tilu, anak merak, and bacang are functioned as a subject. Okay, function as a subject. So to be able to determine whether the words are functioned as a subject or not, it should be able to answer a question of what. Okay. In addition, the subject is also a word that has the characteristics of being able to stand alone. So, however, the next one is to determine the predicate. So here anak dua is considered as a subject. And then here anak merak is the subject, okay, and then anak hiji is as the subject. So the word should be able to give information of the verb. So here we try to find out which one is the verb, and then verb, or we know it as here we know it as predicate. So this one, like kergumunda, is the predicate that tells or give the information of the action that is done by the subject. Okay. So according to Alwi et al., the predicate sentence is usually a verbal phrase or an adjectival phrase. Ramlan, 1996, adds that the predicate is a clause element that always exists and is the center of the clause because it has a relationship with other elements such as subject, object, and complements. So here in the data 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, the words which are predicate are kergumunda, kergumelis, kukunjungan, kumusut, and pakewo. Here gumunda, kukunjungan, and then pakewo, kumusut, and kergumelis. Okay, so unlike English, Sundanese has no auxiliary verb to modify a phrase when it's followed only by adjectival phrase or complements. Okay, and then the next one is we got SPO, which is subject, predicate, object. So the predicate is lali, which means as forgot, and explained about the subject of Adam. So here Adam is as a subject that do the predicate, and then the object is tapel. So the meaning is forget about his or her origin. Then the next analysis for this, the meaning like bangkong katuruban batok. So a frog, bangkong is a frog, and then katuruban is shut or covered, batok is a coconut shell. So the meaning here is a person who is lazy or scared to explore the world, or even just reading a book, or so that makes him or her stupid. So here for the F structure, so katuruban is the predicate that explained about the subject, and then here bangkong is the subject that is doing the predicate. Okay, and then batok is the object of the predicate. Okay, so actually there are lots and plenty analysis about this LFG, but I only gave you like a brief examples on how to analyze like the S structure or the lexical functional grammar. So what is the conclusion? So the conclusion of the research is so from the data finding of the analysis of the data above, it can be formulated that the functional structure contained in Sundanese proverbs is not in line with the structure of the Sundanese language in general, which has a general for general Sundanese language they have as subject, predicate, object, and complement pattern. While the functional structure contained in Sundanese has here, the functional structure Sundanese has 3 types. The first one I found out about a complete pattern. So complete pattern is the pattern that has subject and predicate, at least subject and predicate for the functional structure. And then the number 2 is incomplete pattern. So the incomplete pattern functional structures, and then the third one, the functional structures that have more than one pattern. Okay, more than one pattern. So actually this one, yeah. So complete, incomplete, and more than one pattern. So in the type of complete pattern, functional structure, the functional structure of a subject predicate. For the subject predicate, it is found that they are, so the complete subject predicate, there are 13 patterns that is found. The first one is subject predicate object, and then subject predicate adjective, subject predicate adjective complement, subject predicate complement, and then after that the incomplete one, there is only like a predicate only, predicate object complement, a predicate adjective complement, predicate complement, and then the others like only complement. And of the several patterns form, most proverbs are preceded by predicate functions. Although there are patterns that are preceded by the function of subject, many of the Sundanese proverbs tend to eliminate or explicitly explain the subject. Okay, so that one is the conclusion of the lexical functional grammar in Sundanese proverbs. Thank you very much. And then that one is the last one. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.